Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley, and we are broadcasting today from the NAB trade show. We're out in Las Vegas, focusing on the media and entertainment industry, and certainly one of my guests, who many of you probably know, I'll introduce in a minute, is quite an expert and luminary in this space. But before I do that, let me talk about Data Unchained. If you're not familiar with the podcast, we talk in this podcast with the folks who are looking at data has become a very decentralized, distributed, and difficult to find resources spread across devices, clouds, data centers. It's sprawling in a way that you don't really even know what data you have or where it's located. And this creates a lot of challenges for the infrastructure and IT side, but a lot of business opportunities as you harness it into your workflows and applications. So we'll be talking about some of the problems as well as the solutions that are available in making data a really accessible resource. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sam Bogoch. He is the CEO of Axle AI, and I would say a longtime friend of mine too, so I'm super excited to have Sam on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Molly. It's great to be here.
So Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe before we talk about Axle.
Sure. So I've been in the sort of video industry for a couple decades now, and came out of the photo imaging industry, and before that, pretty eclectic background, including some physics, some medicine, and some party promotion.
Okay.
So I have this background, and meanwhile, starting with about 5 years that I spent at Avid doing media management products, Interplay and MediaCentral, I've ended up CEO of Axle AI, which is an AI-driven media management company, and we offer software to a bunch of different segments in the industry.
And AI on the end of Axle came about long before this recent AI craze, right? You've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, we rebranded as Axle AI in 2018.
Okay.
And that's when it became clear to us that the Achilles heel of the media management business has always been that nobody has time to tag stuff. They have the best intentions, they might even have some interns, but they're like, we never get around to tagging stuff. And so the minute it became clear that AI was going to evolve in this direction, it was a game changer for us. And we said, this is the future.
So I think it's worth, because some of our audience isn't from this space as well. Yeah. So when you're talking about tagging, and I saw this was just remarkable to me the first time I saw it. I went into a studio and there was a group of interns looking at videos and tagging blonde hair, car crash, whatever. Talk a little bit more about what that looked like and kind of the manual process that was involved.
Sure. I mean, it literally was that. Somebody had to watch all the video, annotate it, and sometimes it would happen live. Like, actually, when I was at Avid, we visited Entertainment Tonight, and they had a row of machines with loggers, and then on the red carpet ceremonies, like the Oscars, right, it would be like George Clooney wearing Dolce & Gabbana. George Clooney turns left. George Clooney looks right. George Clooney,
a massive amount of metadata.
And that was just George Clooney,
yeah.
Right? And then it was, untold numbers. So somebody had to do all this, and with rare exceptions, like the red carpets, no one ever has time for this. And again, you think you will, no. And even those interns have better things to do.
Right.
They could be, doing, simple edits for social media. There's all kinds of stuff more interesting and fulfilling than tagging. It's actually a great role for AI because nobody wants to do it. So we're not taking anybody's jobs here.
Exactly.
It's just like, no, I really wanted to grow up to be a metadata logger. No, you did not. Don't worry. At least now there is some. Yeah.
And so that you can find content to do interesting work with,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
And the result of not tagging is you can't find the piece you wanted or the clip or the moment when you wanted to do a commercial or something new, right?
Exactly right. And the other thing that's happened is increasingly people are talking in terms of petabytes. Mm-hmm. We have YouTubers who have petabytes of content.
That's mind-boggling.
The guys at Linus Tech Tips, a very geeky YouTube channel, just did a feature on us. They have 2 petabytes of content to go through. And until they got Axle, they had no way of remembering what was what. And it's not limited to them. It's churches, it's governments, it's corporations, and of course broadcasters and post-production, the traditional users of media. But media has been democratized so much in the last decade that it's everywhere.
So a good consumer example of this is the tagging that I can do now to search my iPhone pictures, right?
Exactly.
Where I can search for cat pictures and it knows what's
a cat is.
and can show me just those pictures. That's kind of the consumer analog,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. You just scale that up like times 1,000, and that's pretty much what we're doing for people in the professional market. Yeah.
So tell us about Axle AI. What is the technology? Where does it run? How do people get access to it?
Sure. Well, up until now, the majority of what we do has been on-premise. So our customers, it's largely driven by the customer preferences. They are movie studios, they are corporations, they're governments, and they don't fully trust the cloud. They trust it for some things, and of course during COVID, they went heavy into the cloud. But in fact, it's a balancing act. And right now, we actually see a significant trend back towards hybrid cloud and on-premise.
What is causing that? Why do you think that is?
A number of different things. First of all, it's getting the invoices from Amazon for their S3 storage that they built up over COVID.
You kind of have to brace yourself before you open the envelope or the email.
Exactly. So that's like, can we do something about this? So that's one. The other, interestingly, is generative AI is scaring the bejesus out of people because they don't know how their material might get scraped or repurposed by others.
Okay.
And you think, well, that's kind of a far-fetched concern until like you read the standard terms of service for Amazon Recognition, which is their flagship AI service. The default is anything you upload to Amazon Recognition, they can reuse for training at any future date without telling you.
Wow.
It's like, what the hey?
Yeah.
Movie studios are not going to go for that.
Right.
So there's a lot of retrenchment. It's like, you know what? We don't know what we don't know out there. We do know that a lot of this stuff is getting scraped for LLMs and so on. And just to be on the safe side, let's bring it back in-house.
Okay.
So it's still hybrid, but I'd say if you'd asked people 3 years ago, they would have said, oh, it's mostly going cloud, and now the trend is mostly in the reverse direction.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you started with Axle running on-prem, and
Correct.
talk a little bit more about the technology.
And
I kind of interrupted your train of thought.
No. I think I interrupted myself. So what's happened is we started out with a very lightweight media management system. Over time, it's become more sophisticated. It's grown. It can handle petabytes. And also, we've added these AI capabilities, which we acquired a company about 4 years ago that we've continued to develop in-house. So these are our own engines, the face recognition, the object and logo recognition. We now have scene understanding with semantic search. All of these are developed in-house, and we can deploy them in whatever way we want. We're not dependent on the hyperscalers. We're not calling some cloud API. And that's, again, a very comforting for our customers, but it's also a way to keep costs down because we're not nickel and diming them for every hour that they process. So that's been one major trend. And then the other trend, interestingly, is that during this time, more and more material is in the cloud. So we've actually just announced here at the show some cloud partnerships using the S3 native data type. It's not so much that we believe everything will end up on premise, but again, there's this balancing act, and we want people to be able to use our technology, whether they are 100% on-prem, 100% cloud, or points between.
Okay. So you have these tags that are auto-generated.
Yep.
I'm very much simplifying this,
Yep.
but how do workflows or human beings interact with that?
So we have a browser interface. Essentially, all the media that goes through our system, we make low-res proxies. And one of the advantages of a system like Hammerspace, for instance, is that we can scan the storage without worrying about the gory details. So it could be on that server over there, it could be on a SAN over here, it could be in the cloud. We can just scan it all as folder. Mm-hmm. And then we generate proxies. Those proxies can then be streamed out in this user interface, which is very simple and intuitive. And then we go to work on those proxies and analyze them with the AI. And that's where we recognize faces. We have a celebrity database. We recognize what's happening in a scene. We can pick up numbers and characters on screen, objects and logos. So all that post-processing actually happens on the proxies, partly in the name of efficiency, but also because you wouldn't want to plow through like red footage or some of these other high-end formats when there's just zillions of unnecessary pixels there.
Right. And I think in this world where there is so much content, the time to market, finding it, speeding that up is a big deal. The partnership we have, and we're just developing between our two companies, is exciting to imagine where Hammerspace is unifying those data sets.
Yeah.
you're unifying what is it? You know,
Right.
like all the brains around what is this data set.
Totally.
And then also you do a lot to interact with the workflow itself, right? On the media side. And maybe
Right.
let's talk about that. That's not so new for you, but I
No,
think an
yeah.
important component to this.
Absolutely. So we have, for instance, a detailed plugin panel for Adobe Premiere where all of the AI metadata is not only searchable, but in fact can be delivered into the Premiere timeline. And we have a
Perfect.
drag and drop app that works with Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve and Media Composer that handles, I'd say, the other editing leaders in the space. So one way or another, you can get both your media and your metadata out of our system and into your typical production workflows. And we have another tool called Connector that lets you build custom workflows in case our standard plugins don't exactly suit your needs.
That's incredible. So much innovation so quickly. So kind of looking, not the future is now, but we're comparing to the past where you had humans tagging, trying to, maybe make available a little information about the video. Now you have everything. What does the future look like? When a studio moves to this type of environment, what does their business cadence look like? I mean, how fast are they moving? Are they creating more content? Are they time to market faster? What is the outcome?
So we think the biggest driver of this actually is social media.
Really?
And mobile devices, because everything needs to get repurposed right away. Like previously, if you think back 5 or 10 years, let's say you shot a show. You'd edit the show, it would go on air, and you were done.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Now that's just the beginning of the process because the marketing department wants you to start posting highlight clips, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do this. And then, we need it repurposed for mobile. And we need it, for in-flight. And all these different shapes and sizes of the same video. So it's not one show anymore. It's like 40 shows, and they keep changing not only in aspect ratio and bandwidth, but in fact do you want the TikTok version that's 10 seconds long?
Right.
Do you want the YouTube version? Do you
Do you need subtitles? All these things, right?
So it's like times a zillion. And that is really where the rubber meets the road for us because we're enabling that. If people had to do all that by hand and figure out where those highlights were and figure out when a character appears so that they can put it in the promo, it's like 10 times slower. It's really not doable. And if all we had to worry about was one version of finished content, that might not be such a big deal, but in fact, it's times a zillion.
Yeah.
So that's really the driver. We're just helping people meet that demand, and in some cases, it's large archives of material that could be fairly stale, or it could be a show that just wrapped last week, and everything from the dailies to the recent edits of the work in progress, to the social media work that has to happen in parallel, to the promos that need to go out before the show airs. Like there's a whole spectrum of needs there, and it's just so much easier when you can find the stuff.
Absolutely. We were shooting episodes through the day today, and we were talking with QStar, who's about archives and bringing archives to life in these kinds of workloads. And you just kind of touched on that, but I think it's such an amazing concept that an infrastructure team can decide where content's going to live based on cost or whatever their decision performance points. But all the metadata, all of the information about what that content is lives in one place within Axle, right? And so you don't lose your archive. You don't lose that magic nugget that's so valuable that maybe you didn't know was valuable when it was shot.
Well,
right?
exactly right. Or maybe you find it later. A great example is, our face recognition characterizes faces. But it's not a one and done kind of deal. And so, for instance, let's say you were going through award ceremonies and somebody's an up and coming celebrity, but not that big a deal.
Right.
Let's say somebody like Olivia Rodrigo, right?
Okay.
She wasn't that big a deal 2 years ago. She was a very big deal last year. She's a bigger deal this year. At some point, you need to find her, but 2 years ago, you didn't even know who she was.
Right.
Still, she's in that footage. So there's also that retroactive need to find things that are relevant today, in addition to all the things that you thought were relevant a year or 2 years or 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's super interesting how people are using this stuff, and the nuances of. Another great example is college sports, right? With the new licensing terms, college athletes can in fact monetize their likeness, right? Well, that means that all of the college sports highlights might need to be narrowed down to that one player so that you could find the NIL highlights to monetize with.
Right.
But again, what college sports program goes around following individual athletes and grabbing their footage
just in case?
Just in case.
Yeah.
But NIL says that you almost need to be doing that or you're behind the time.
Right. And so now it's all automated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing. So Sam, I think this is exciting to learn about, and I think a lot of people will be interested to dig in to really see more about how do you deploy, how do you get licensing. What do you recommend? Is it Axel.ai the right place to go to learn? Or
it is, yeah. Just www.axel.ai, XLE by the way, and there's our website. We have good information there, but also feel free to contact any of our folks. We are fairly global, so we have people in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, and very good experts who really know these workflows. Because if all we had was technology and we just sort of said here, go, good luck with it, it would have a fraction of the impact.
Yes.
Fraction of the impact that it has when we can actually show people how to use it.
Well, and that's where your history in this space is so important. You understand the workflow from end to end, and you're plugging right into it. You're not breaking the workflow. You're just integrating beautifully, right?
Thanks.
So one last question. How hard is it to deploy? Is this a big lift for an organization, or is it something that kind of can sidecar on and get started quickly? What does that look like?
That's a great question. So as of today, we actually have Axel AI Cloud, where you literally just need to put in your credit card, and for $15 per terabyte per month, you can be using this technology pay as you go. Now, that's not for a big customer, obviously, but it's a great way to get a toe in the water. And in terms of spinning it up on premise or in a dedicated private cloud, it typically takes like 2 or 3 servers, low tens of thousands of dollars. So it's not cheap, but it's far cry from what traditional enterprise MAMs cost or AI frameworks that, are fairly exotic. We bring it down to like an Intel CPU, an NVIDIA GPU, and you just have to have good networking and be able to run a virtual machine. And that's pretty much it.
Most organizations, I think, can swallow that.
Yeah. We even have customers that are deploying it on workstations.
Yeah.
They don't even have dedicated servers. It's just, hey, we want to reuse this graphics workstation. As long as it has enough processing power, that's perfect.
Perfect. Hey, Sam, thank you for taking time. I think this is the last one of the day. The show's about to close.
Oh, and by the way, congratulations on the cool-looking award.
Yes,
that is very impressive.
We had trumpets in the booth not long ago. Did you hear that?
I didn't.
They
I missed it.
actually bring a trumpeter when they bring these Best of Show awards.
That is so cool.
And announce it. It was like revelry. it was amazing.
Sorry I missed that. Very cool.
Thank you for stopping by. It's so great to see you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.